good morning, everyone. Welcome to the first TEFL webinar series sessions. And my name is Chandukrit Tingalaya, or you can call me Ode. It is my pleasure to be your host and your moderator for this webinar sessions. So, okay, once again, welcome to our first webinar sessions titled On Narrative Inquiry, Research or Just Stories. To officially start our talk today, I would like to call upon the director of the TEFL program, Assistant Professor Dr. Prabjandee Sukhavati, for her opening speech.
Hi everyone. As we are facing coronavirus pandemic crisis as the global issue, and never before have we encountered educational disruption on such a scale. The educators around the world are looking for the best practice to ensure that learning never stops. TEFL webinar series is taking innovative actions to unlock solutions to respond to the situation, and we are trying to find means to support learners and teachers to keep on provisioning education at distance. In times like this, I'd like to express my appreciation to all educators in ELT who never give up on sharing knowledge to our learning community. Without their contributions, this project might not be possible. Moreover, I'd like to thank my colleagues, the TEFL committees, and the TEFL student team from the Faculty of Education for making the event happen. Distance never matters in education, and learning is lifelong. Welcome to our TEFL webinar series on Zoom.
Thank you very much, Ajahn Prabjandee, for your opening welcome speech. So, storytelling is something we do naturally. People have embraced the power of story to capture the richness of the individual experience and the complexities of human life, to give the meaning to lived experience. Narrative inquiry is the qualitative methodology that is based on this tradition. Slowly but increasingly, this narrative inquiry gained its popularity in the educational research, especially in the applied linguistic and the ELT field. But is narrative inquiry just story or research? And if you're interested in doing this research, how do we get started? Today, we are very honored to welcome our speaker, Dr. Denchai, to share his stories about narrative inquiry. So let me introduce Dr. Denchai Prabjandee. Dr. Denchai Prabjandee is a teacher, educator, and the chair of the PhD program of the program teaching Global Language, Faculty of Education, Burapha University, Thailand. His interests include teacher identity and the global spread of English and its impact on language teacher education. He's also, the researcher who has numerous papers, and his recent publications appear in an international journal such as Asian Englishist, Teachers Development, and issues in educational research. So, ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Dr. Denchai Prabjandee. Thank you. Take it away, Dr. Denchai.
Okay, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the TEFL webinar. Now, Shanukrit, how can I share? Okay, I'm going to share my screen, okay? All right, so thank you for a wonderful introduction, and thank you for the TEFL committee and Ajahn Prabjandee to invite me to share one of my passion research approach, which is narrative inquiry. And as you may know, I sent out the schedule. We will have 2 weeks for workshops, 2 weeks of workshop for doing narrative inquiry. And let me, okay. So the scope of the webinar, we will be working on narrative inquiry for 2 weeks. On June 14th, we will be talking about philosophical, theoretical underpinnings of narrative inquiry. And also we will be talking about how to design narrative inquiry. And also we will be talking about tools to collect narrative, or tools to collect stories. And on the 21st, we will zoom into the analysis part, and also the trustworthiness, and also the data representation of narrative inquiry. And hopefully in these 2 days, we will learn how to do narrative inquiry. Okay. Now, this is a workshop. So I would like everyone to participate as much as you can. Okay. And before we go into the workshop, I'd like to review a little bit about qualitative research. I was informed that all of you, learn qualitative research already, and then I'd like to capture that review part in order to help us understand the same thing. Now, for what happened? Uh-oh. Okay, so for qualitative research, what does it mean? Now, I mostly am guided by Merriam definition of qualitative research. It is an umbrella term, again, of interpretative techniques, which aims to describe, decode, or translate a phenomenon. So there are natural phenomena out there to be interpreted by using a variety of techniques. There are naturally occurring phenomena out there that researchers are interested in understanding. So when we do qualitative research, the goal is to understand a phenomenon by using a variety of techniques. And qualitative researchers are interested in understanding meaning that people have constructed, and how people make sense of their world and their experiences they have in the world. So it's strongly related to human experiences. It's strongly related to phenomenon out there in the outside world. Now, these are characteristics of qualitative research. First, we focus on meaning. And second is researcher is the primary instrument. Now, unlike other type of research, where the researcher decide research instrument and aim to collect the data, and also they may develop hypothesis, right? But for qualitative research, the main research instrument is the researcher. The researchers will be in the field, or will be in the social phenomenon, and then trying to discover or understand the meaning or the phenomenon. Okay, based on that, being researchers in the field, it is an inductive process, which is from specific details and then to generate abstraction. It's called from specific to general. We call an inductive process. And qualitative research is inductive, is rich in description, and the design is very emergent and flexible. There is no way that we will plan thoroughly in qualitative research. Everything will be emerged once the researcher is living in the field or living in a social phenomenon. And sample selection, actually, I don't like the term sample selection, because sample is very quantitative oriented term. For participant selection is typically non-random, and it's very purposeful and small. And the researchers spend substantial amount of time in a natural setting. So with that in mind, qualitative research, the goal is not to test hypothesis, but to understand a phenomenon. And narrative inquiry is situated in that. Now, if we compare between qualitative and quantitative terms, for the qualitative part, on the second column, the focus is on the quality, on the nature of the essence of it, whereas quantitative research focus on quantity. The goal is to understand, describe, discover meaning, or understand a phenomenon. But for quantitative research, it's for prediction, testing hypothesis, testing theory. For qualitative, the design is flexible, sample is small, data collection is mainly researchers, okay? Analyzing is inductive or constant comparative, and the findings are comprehensive and holistic, okay? Now, these are five common approaches in qualitative research, which are narrative inquiry, phenomenology, grounded theory, ethnography, and case study. So these are the five common approaches in qualitative research. And I am passionate about doing narrative inquiry. My research has been using narrative inquiry to explore critical issues in applied linguistics and also ELT. That's why it is my honor to share a passion of mine, the research methodology that may be useful for you. So we will do only narrative inquiry in this webinar. All right, now, so let's get started with the workshop. So those are a brief introduction of qualitative research. Now we are going to do workshop in order to understand narrative inquiry. Okay. All right. So in my email, I asked you to bring an artifact, right? That represent yourself that represent who you are. So this is the activity. Okay. So I will randomly select one person to share a story of your artifact. And the artifact, it can be anything, can be an object, can be concept, okay? Can be an event, can be a person, okay? Artifact that represent who you are. And then for others, okay? For others, I want you to listen to the story carefully, okay? And note taking is encouraged while listening to the story. So after the first person share the story of an artifact, and then the rest of the class will be taking notes, and then I will randomly select others person, maybe 2 or 3 people, to retell the story by using your notes. Okay, so 3 steps. But I will start with picking up someone randomly. Now I'm going to take off from this. Ode, can you help me do the
random or?
Yeah, I have the name list here. I have the name list here. I don't know everyone. So, but I will start with the random first. Okay. I like number 13.
Number 13.
Supavadi.
Supavadi, okay. So Miss Supavadi, are you here, right? Okay, I will unmute you, Miss Tan Supavadi.
Okay, Supavadi. Now we need to see her in the screen as well.
Yes.
บุ๊กเห็นตัวเองอะทำไงวะ
Supavadi, could you show or could you share the screen and your artifact so that everyone can see your face and also your artifact?
ได้ปะ
Which one is Supavadi, left or right? Oh, okay.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. For me,
hang on, Supavadi. So others, you need to take notes on her stories. You will be required to retell her stories. So it is important to take notes. Okay.
Okay.
Supavadi.
Okay. This is my artifact. This is a pen.
Can you show a little closer to the camera, please? Thank you. Okay.
Okay. Anybody, can you see my artifact?
Yes, we can.
Okay. The story for this artifact. I think that this artifact represent myself because I think that this artifact can help me to write everything, to write memory for myself. Whatever that I experience, I can save everything from my experience by using this pen. So I think this pen is very meaningful for me, and I think that throughout of my life, I can use this with me to help me to be a better person, to help me to be a new person, and open for everything that I will encounter in the future.
Are you done?
Yes.
Okay, now I'm going to give others 30 seconds to finish your notes. Okay, 30 seconds to finish your notes. Okay, time's up. Now, I'm going to randomly select two people to retell her story. The first one is Sutida.
Sutida, Miss Amy.
Sutida.
Miss Amy, can you share your video and your yes and your
Yes.
sound?
Good morning. I'm not okay to share the video today, but can you just see my picture there?
Yeah, sure.
No problem.
So from what Miss Suparvati shared, she said that a pen is her artifact, and this pen is very meaningful for her, and because of that, she used her pens for writing and collecting things, and can help her to encounter for things in the future. This is what I collected and take a note down.
Okay, thank you. So the next person would be Mr. Thanakorn.
Thanakorn, Nongkorn, could you recount the story, please?
Okay. Okay, so good morning everyone. So what I have taken note from Peter's talk earlier that about her artifact is that her pen that she got from TEFL, it is really meaningful for her to make her to write about herself in many experiences that she encountered and also helps her remember things that she have done so far, and she believes that this pen will help her do her in the future. Yeah. Yes.
All right, thank you. Okay, this is the first set of the artifact. Now I'm moving on to the next set of the artifact. The next person who will be sharing the artifact is what do you call Tachagrit.
Mr. Moss.
Oh, Mr. Moss. Okay.
Okay, I'll move mine.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
So sorry, Moss is here because he's,
Oh, okay.
He's the
Hi
moderator.
guys. You can hear me, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so my artifact that I have with me is my AirPod. My AirPod. Because like every time when I travel, I like to travel a lot. And every time, I mean, everywhere that I go, I always bring my AirPod with me because I just don't like to like quiet place. So that's why I like to listen to something all the time. And I think my AirPod can share not just only the experience that I encounter everywhere that I go, but every time I listen to a song, it can also tell a story as well from the airport. Yeah, that's it for me.
All right, now I'm giving you 30 seconds to finish your notes and to prepare for recount the story of Mr. Tatchakrit. Okay, so 30 seconds to finish your notes.
Thank you.
Okay, time's up. Then Gail Tida, right? Gail Tida.
Yes. Okay. Gatida, are you here? Alice? Alice? Gatida, are you here? Are you there? No?
No?
Alice? Oh, I think Alice is not in this.
Okay, who's that? Melam? M-E-L-A. Melam? Okay.
From Bhutan. Yes.
Okay, Melam.
Nilam, hi.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone.
Hi.
Morning, Melam.
Morning, Ajan. Okay, so let's move on to his artifact. His artifact was airport, whereby he says that he loves traveling everywhere all the time. So whenever he travels, he doesn't want to be left alone. He doesn't want he doesn't quite like quiet time. So he listens to song which keeps him connected to stories. That's all, I guess. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Now, the last person for this set is, okay, Chanukrit, since you are there, so you can start to retell the story.
Okay, Kawachan then. Okay, Moss say that he loves traveling. Everywhere he goes, he always brings his airport with him because he doesn't like the quiet place and he'd like to listen to something all the time. Every time he listens to the song can tell the story as well.
Okay. All right. All right. Now, so, all right. Thank you very much. So we will use these two artifacts. Actually, if we are in the classroom, I'll ask you to do pair work. So since this one is very difficult to do pair work, sharing artifacts and also retailing the artifacts to the class, but I have to do this kind of activity. All right, now I'm going to share the screen in order to show you some of the discussion questions that we have. Okay. All right, now since you completed the artifacts already, now I want you to think about, for those of you who shares, like Supavadi and Moss, right? What was it like sharing your story? And can you explain the process of picking the artifact? Like, why did you probably have maybe 10,000 of artifacts that represent who you are, right? Or you may have uh, a lot in your room, but why did you pick a pen, and why did you pick an earpod? So what was the process of that? And for those of you who retold the story, what was it like retelling the story? What were decisions made before retelling the stories? So when you took notes, what was the process? How did you take notes? Okay. And for other observers, whose version of story, comparing the two, who retold story, is more convincing, and why? So let's start with the first, Supavadi. Now, can I have you back, Supavadi? So what is like sharing your story? Was it easy or was it difficult? What were the decision made?
For sharing for the first person, I think it's so shock for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, but I can manage this. And I think that I will tell all of you the reasons why I use the pen to be my artifact. I think that the pen for me is very meaningful, and it is the thing that's always with me all the time. Because I would like to write everything that I have experienced to get more knowledge from using them. Yes.
Have you considered other objects before you ended up using a pen?
Before using this pen, I would like to choose a ruler.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
But a ruler can be meaningful to you too, right? But why?
Yes.
But why did you finally end up choosing a pen over the ruler? What did the ruler cannot represent you?
Because the ruler cannot be always with me like a pen, and I think that the pen is more useful for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it can help me much better than a ruler, so I choose this.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yes.
Now, Moss, Tachakrit, Moss, okay. What was the process of picking an earpod? Did you consider other artifacts?
Actually, I did consider to use my iPad, but and then I saw my AirPod, and I think that every time when I forgot my AirPod at home, so I would just keep complaining to myself, why do I like forget it? Because like I personally am a very loud person, so I like to like keep like things with me or talk with other people all the time. So when I am alone with myself, so I would rather just hear something or hear someone talking. So that's why I pick my AirPod over my iPad.
Okay. Now, can you see that for the participants, right, who shares, for the one who share stories? Now, if we ask them to share, we have a prompt, right? Bring an artifact to share your story that represent who you are, and then when we ask, other details, so we can see that we hear more stories from the one who shares, right? We hear more stories. We started to get in depth, but at this point, we're still kind of trying to understand who they are. They haven't connected the artifacts to them, right? For example, Supavadi is just telling that the pen is very meaningful for her, okay? And then she shows a ruler, she showed a pen over the ruler because she felt that it was with her all the time. But at this point, we still haven't connected to who they are, right? And then we started to understand some based on the stories, but we still need to more questions, Okay. Now let's move on to the one who retold story. Can I have Amy back, please? Amy, what was it like retelling Supavadi's story? And what were the decisions made before retelling the story?
Yes, for me, I have a note down, and the things that before I take a note down, I need to listen to her carefully in each steps that she said. And the second thing, I will take a note down just only the main point from what the speaker said. And the last thing, I think along. I also think along what was the speaker say, and I compare it with myself, and then just take a note down before I retell you the story. Thank you, Professor.
So you went through several decisions, right? Before you retold the story. You compare her story to, you were trying to compare her story to you, making connections,
Yes,
and take down some notes. What was your note like? Like key phrases or keywords? What was it like?
I take a note like phrases. Like I have a 2 bullet point. First, I take Miss Pawadi name down, and then she said a pen, and then second, after that I put a bullet point and said that she said using pen for writing and collecting things. This is my note.
Okay, all right, thank you. Now go back to Mr. Tanagon, please. What was it like retelling the story? What were decisions made before retelling the story?
To me, when retelling story, I try to speak with the phrases that I wrote down earlier. And the decision that I made before retelling story is that I try to see uh, what happened about her artifact that she presents, and I try to see her context and her experiences before retelling story.
So you try to stick with her original words, right? Yeah, so you try to stick with her original words. Okay, good. All right, now come back. Let's still focus on the first set. Now for other observers, now you heard Amy's story and also Tanagon's story. Whose version of story is more convincing or could capture what Supavadi said better and why? Now, this is the volunteer session. For the other observers, who do you think, whose version of story is more convincing or better captured what Supavadi said? Anyone?
Okay, good morning, Kapajat. So I would say that Thanagon's version is more convincing because he got some information that I didn't write down. For example, he said that P. Supavadi had the pen from Japan, but I didn't catch the sentence, so I think he's more convincing than hers.
Okay. All right. Now let's me back to Supavadi. Did you say you get the pen from Japan?
Anyone can you hear me?
Yeah. Did you say that you get the pen from Japan? You got the pen from Japan?
No. I haven't said about that. How I get a pen.
Okay. Are you sure?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Now, next person, please. So whose version is more convincing?
Can I have a try?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, I think P.Ot version is more convincing because P.Ot. No. Chankri Teen Kai Laya. Sorry, the host version.
Hi.
Hi.
Hang on. We are focusing on the story of Amy.
Oh, the first story.
Yeah, the first.
Sorry.
Let's focus on the first one first.
Okay. So for the first one, I think still Gons is more convincing because he tell more details in his speech. He is more full sentence, and I think the first one who tried to retell the story lost some details, like she tried to take down the memory, something like that. She lost some details, so I think Picons is more convincing.
Okay, all right, thank you. Okay.
You, Stella.
All right, now let's come back to Gail. Is it Gail Tida, right?
No. Yeah,
Oh no, Melam. Is it Melam that?
Oh, she's already, but she's absent for the very first one.
Okay, so Melam. Now let's talk about Moss.
Yes.
Moss.
Airport.
Yeah, the airport one. For Moss, we have Melam stories and Chanukrit. Which one is more convincing? No. Hang on. Sorry. I think let's go to Melam first. What was it like retelling the story of Moss? What were decisions made before retelling the story?
Okay, so first of all, I was ready with all ears to listen to whatever he was going to say. Then I made sure to make note of the focus words or the focus phrases, like he said, like trouble, doesn't like listen to a song. So I just made note of the phrases, some few phrases and few words that I felt important to be noted so that I don't forget. That
So
was
you
what
were
I
so
did.
ready, right? You were so ready to listen to get the stories, to elicit the stories. Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Chanukrit, what was it like retelling the story?
I think it's pretty interesting. It seems like, like even though I know Moss, but I don't know this part of Moss idea or Moss concept. So when I heard, I tried to capture pretty much almost everything he said. Then from that, when you asked me to retell the story, I use pretty much exact word that he say, but in my interpretation of this is how I think he is or he was. So that's how. So the way I explain it, I add some intonation, some slower pace. That's my interpretation. But the words itself come from Moss.
Oh, okay. Thank you. So you were trying to look at the story from Moss' perspective. Okay. All right. Now, for the who's that? CT, right? Now it's your turn. You can share which one is more convincing. Or you kind of say that more Chanukrit, right? It's more convincing. And why?
Yes.
Tell me why.
Oh, I think he retold all the details, and he used he just changed the first version into the third version, and the whole sentence is just the same as P. Moss said. So I think it's more convincing to me.
Okay. What about others?
Thank you.
What about others? Can I have one more person?
Anyone would like to try? Okay. Or maybe we can just name. I'll call the name. Sorry.
All right. Okay, that's all right. Okay, so these are very short snapshot of what it's like to do a narrative inquiry. But keep in mind that what we are doing now is far simpler than narrative inquiry researchers do. Okay, so we do more than just collecting stories. We do more than retelling the stories, and we do more than just trying to convince others who is more which one it's more convincing. These are stories that a lot of your reflection and discussion actually capture the essence of narrative inquiry. Now, how is this activity related to narrative inquiry? So this last question, Benjamin, what do you think narrative inquiry is? Is she here?
Yes.
Yes.
What do you think narrative inquiry is based on this simple activity?
The narrative inquiry, I think, is like when the speaker tell about their own experience, share their own experience, share their own story, like based on like personal experience.
Mm.
Like sometimes is based on the sequence of the time of the story of the speaker.
Sequence of time. Okay.
Yes.
All right. Thank you. Supachaya.
Hi.
Yes. What do you think narrative inquiry is?
So based on the activity, I think that narrative inquiry is when a speaker or the storyteller reflects on the experience, or based on the artifact that was there. So it's a reflective experience, in my opinion.
Collecting reflective experience.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thanakon.
Yes.
Okay. So what do you think narrative inquiry is based on this activity?
From the activity, so what I have seen so far is that we try to collect the stories, the elements that have that include in the story, and try to see what can relate to the artifact that the one who shares their artifacts, something like that.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Vichan, right? Vichan, Vichan.
Dom. Oh, Dom.
Dom. Okay. Yeah.
Dom from Cambodia.
Okay. So what do you think narrative inquiry is?
So based on what we just did earlier, I think the narrative inquiry is the method to retell the experience of the storyteller in our own words.
Okay. All right. All right. Thank you very much for sharing. So based on the first question, so let's capture your discussion and also capture the essence of each questions. Now, as you can see, when Supawadi and Moss, right, Tân and Moss share the story, they were analytically thinking about what to share. So the first process when we collect stories, the participants always selective. They are always selecting what story to tell. That's the first assumption. Story is not out there to be discovered. The first assumption in narrative inquiry is that story is always purposeful. The participants always have intention in mind. These are the kind of stories that they want to share. As you can see that there were processes that they picking the artifact before sharing with the whole class, right? So the nature of story is purposeful, selective, and also analytical. They actually analyze the story before retelling the story. That's the nature of stories. Now, the second one talk about narrative inquirer or the narrative researchers. Now, I'm glad that when I asked you what were decisions made before telling stories. So you were all ears, you were trying to be open, right? And I like Amy's idea in a sense that even though we are trying to be open, even though you are trying to be objective in listening to stories, we automatically compare the participant stories with our own stories. That's the assumption of doing narrative inquiry, which means that the story that the researchers retold is always co-constructed. What does it mean is that it's the production of the researcher, the participants and the researchers. Okay, so narrative inquiry lay out this assumption clearly to the research world, that we acknowledge that the story that we retold are the product of the co-constructed knowledge. It's never be pure story. Even though we are trying so hard to capture the details, trying to be objective, but the product of stories, you will miss one thing, always miss a thing, always miss many details, okay? And for other observers, you are like readers. You are like readers of narrative inquiry research. A lot of times somebody will try to listen, try to make sense of the stories, of the retold stories, and try to whether which story is more convincing. And these are nature of human beings, that we always make connection, okay? So these three questions prompt us to think about the nature of story or the nature of narrative, the kind of work that narrative inquiry do, and the kind of work that readers react to our work. Okay, now let me move into details. I can send the PowerPoint to you later, so that you don't need to worry about copy down the PowerPoint. Okay, now to narrate, like Moss and Supavadi, right? To narrate is to do more than give account or tell a story. It's not just tell. They analyzed, they select before they tell the story. They analyze before the story, before telling the story. And also they are purposeful or intentional what kind of story to tell, okay? And to narrate, therefore, in shaping strategies such as repetition. For example, I heard a lot when Supavadi talk about meaningful for her, it's her experience, the pen is with her all the time. We can see this kind of repetition. So as a narrative research inquirer, we need to make meaning. Why she always emphasize on meaningful? Why she always use the word stay with her all the time? What's her word choice in there? Their intensity, right? Intensity of experience, their linkage, their magnification, tensions, or interruptions. Now, when you tell stories, it's never be like a very smooth story. There are interruptions. If we zoom in into interruptions of stories, we can actually learn a lot more, okay? And to narrate, it's not about mirror of what happens, okay? Rather, it is the construction of meaning about the events. Now, how many of you believe Supavadi's story 100% sure? Even though she tells story, right? She's our participants, let's say. How can we know that she tell us 100% truth? Do we really know about that?
I think so, John.
Think so? Okay, so we trust her 100% because it's her story, right? Okay, how do we know that the pen is there with her all the time? Right? Okay, so these are questions that narrative researchers will be engaged in understanding, and also will be engaged in exploring stories. Now, let me give a little bit lecture on philosophical and epistemological theoretical underpinnings of narrative inquiry. So what is a narrative then? So narrative are stories of experience. I'm glad that when you mention what you learn of doing the activity, it's about experience, stories of experience that we lived and told. And I add, we retold or we retell the story all the time. And once we retell the story, it becomes part of who we are. It becomes part of our identity. So narrative is not only the subject of to be studied. Narrative is grounded in human experience. It's fundamentally experiential. Okay, and the characteristic of narrative is that its inherent sequentiality. What it means is that when we tell story, we always have beginning, middle, and end, right? Or it always has the end. So when we tell the stories, and narrative is factual indifference. What does it mean is that humans have innate readiness to sense or reference the narrative. So we always have ability to sense authenticity or trustworthiness of the story. Okay, that's why if we if someone tell us a story, we can sense that these people are lied or these people are telling the truth. Okay, so we can sense that. And narrative has unique illumination. Narrative is used, has the ability to explain difficult concepts into comprehensible forms. And narrative is creative mode of construing reality. Please underline the word construing. Reality is always interpreted. It's not the same as reality of quantitative research. Okay, reality in narrative research or qualitative research is always constructed or interpreted, is subject to interpretation. Okay, and narrative is the creative mode because it has a sense of immediacy, freshness, and excitement. Right, when Ode, right, Chanukrit retell the story of Moss, he's tried to include that excitement, the tone. Okay, that's the nature of narrative. Now, narrative also has been used interchangeably with stories. There is no distinction between narrative and stories. So in our field, we treat stories and narrative similarly. So whereas maybe others researchers try to differentiate between the two terms. But if you work in narrative inquiry in education or applied linguistics, we don't try to differentiate between the two terms. Now, Clarendon and Connelly is the kind of big names doing narrative inquiry. Narrative inquiry actually emerged in teacher education field. So it is specific for teacher education research. And they describe three-dimensional narrative space. So they claim that in all narrative, it consists of these three interactive dimensional space. They claim that every narrative has the participant of the story, is essentially experiential. It has the time. Okay, so narrative is subject to time, and it has the physical setting or places to be located. Now, these three-dimensional narrative space is not for use. It's not a criteria to determine which one is narrative, which one is not. But it is helpful when we analyze the data, like who tell the story, at what time, and in what context. So when you analyze the story, you always have this kind of three-dimensional space in mind when in order to understand meaning. It's not the criteria to determine whether which one is story or not, but it is useful for data analysis. Now, why narrative matter? So first of all, a narrative provides complex explanation of a particular issues. So for example, teacher identity, right, or learner identity. Identity is very complex. Now, narrative can provide complex explanation of teacher identity, social justice, emotion, hegemony of English, power in language education. Okay, so narrative has the power to that, and narrative resists simple answers. So rather than trying to do research that answer yes or no, but narrative is interested in details. Narrative reveals what has remained unsaid and what has been unspeakable. And this is what drawn me as a researcher into narrative inquiry. So there are issues out there that it is difficult to tackle quantitatively or with other type of research, such as power in language teaching, okay, such as language ideology, okay, such as social structure in language learning, such as identity, or such as underprivileged students. So narrative has this kind of particular that we are interested in explore in order to reveal other aspects of human life. And narrative helps us see more carefully and completely. So when we look at narrative, when we are interested in details, researchers always try to step back a little, like what are the details here, okay? All of these are useful when we think about narrative inquiry. Now, these are the epistemology of narrative. Epistemology is the theory of knowledge. What kind of knowledge is possible? What kind of knowledge is legitimate? Now, for example, in quantitative research, right? Quantitative research, epistemology is objectivism. So they believed that knowledge is out there waiting to be discovered. That's epistemology of quantitative research. But in narrative inquiry, we also believe that stories are the source, great source of knowledge. In my paper, in my dissertation, I point out very clearly that we all live in the sea of narratives. So we always have live in narrative. If you ask yourself, what kind of good stories that you have heard recently? I'm pretty sure that a lot of us will be able to retell the story, because once where we go, it's always stories. The stories are with us, okay? And humans use narrative to organize experience by framing, constructing, or segmenting events of the world. And knowledge and reality is derived from the act of telling stories or narrative. Now, this one is very useful in community research. For example, there are researchers who use narrative inquiry to explore how people farm rice. So we maybe some people know already how to farm rice. Maybe farmer know already how to farm rice. But as a stranger or as a researchers, when we went into the field, when we go into the field and ask the farmers to retell the story of how they farm rice and try to generate knowledge from there. So knowledge is derived from the act of telling stories. And the last point of no epistemology is that humans organize their experiences into narrative episodes, which he termed the collective stories. And these narratives provide a powerful framework to access to human socio-cultural wisdom. It's talk about socio-cultural wisdom. Now, how is it related to education then? Narrative inquiry emerged in the field of education very specifically, unlike other type of research. For example, quantitative research, right? It's not emerged from education, but we bring quantitative research into education during the 1990s. But narrative is interested in teachers' life, okay? So the socio-cultural turn at that time shift away from studying how languages should be taught to the life of the teachers. So rather than exploring how languages should be taught, a group of researchers shift away that focus to explore the decision-making process, the teacher lives, the teacher experiences, because the argument is that teachers is a powerful agent to design content, to design the material, to select the materials. If we understand their life, we can support them to design this language teaching. Those are the argument in this narrative inquiry. Now for narrative inquiry, okay, researchers in education, as I say, it is specific to education. and the quote from Shafma and Viz in 2011. I think this quote is very useful when thinking about narrative inquiry. Researchers in education who are gravitate toward narrative inquiry are inherently interested in details, complexities, context, and stories of human experiences of learning and teaching. Okay? If we want to be specific, we are interested in teacher experiences of language teaching or English language teaching. So those are the interest of researchers working in the field. Now my question to you is, based on this quote, what kind of research questions are appropriate for narrative inquiry? Now I'm talking about kinds of research questions. Okay, anyone?
I think it should be open-ended.
Open-ended? Okay. Oh,
Very subjective.
okay. Okay, open-ended and subjective. Others? Let's about the, is it, so it should be open-ended, right? Questions, research questions. So mostly qualitative research, narrative inquiry are appropriate for the why and the how questions. So it is open-ended, right? So now, can you give me examples of issues that is appropriate to use narrative inquiry? For example, teacher identity is appropriate because it's about their experience. Okay, what else?
Teacher challenges.
Teacher challenges. Okay, yes. Okay. Is someone typing or what? Okay, now you can share, you can participate. Can you give examples of issues that are appropriate for narrative inquiry?
I think some process, like if you want to investigate some kind of process, we don't know exactly what it is, but we just kind of to observe. So the how these things happen.
Okay, yeah. So maybe a process of teaching writing, right? So we don't know whether how these experienced teachers teach writing, right? So we want to understand that process. It's part of their experience. Okay, thank you, Ot. Okay, next, please. Can you give more example, others? What are appropriate? How can I?
So we have Juanita say that teacher experience of teaching.
Yes, teacher experience of teaching. Okay, thank you. Yeah, that's good. Okay. What about others?
Can it be like students' experience?
Yes, definitely. Student experience.
Yeah.
I have seen a lot of research using narrative inquiry with student experience. For example, learning experience abroad.
Yeah, I thought of that. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Supichaya. Okay.
Hello.
Yes.
Do you hear me? Okay, I'm Duong Kamon. I'm from EIL, so I'm an observer in this class. But I need to ask a question. So let's say if students do exams, and then I ask them later how they came up with their answers. Do these call narrative inquiries? Let's say, how do they tackle the choice, things like, I don't know, maybe it's called that's a term, retrospective protocol, something like that. But are they the same thing?
That's very good question. No, they're not the same thing. So narrative inquiry actually interested in more complicated issues rather than like their, for example, the issues of like, what was it like? Why do you choose this one? It's more like conversation style analysis.
Yes.
So we don't need to use narrative inquiry for that purpose. We narrative inquiry will not label that as narrative issues. But if you are studying, for example, experience of people who take TOEFL test 20 times and pass. Yeah, these would be narrative inquiry, because these are stories that are complex, right? There are details in there to be investigated, and there are context in there to be investigated. Does it make sense? So
Yes.
my answer is not the same thing as retrospective research, but I'll go in depth later. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So some Yoshikon say that the example would be teachers' challenges in online teaching.
Oh, that would be important stories to investigate. Yes.
Yes. Melam say that handling misbehavior.
Handling misbehaviors, yes, would be good, but whose experience? Maybe experience of like seasoned teachers.
Probably like a novice teacher or something.
Okay, yeah, that would make it, or maybe how novice researchers handle misbehaviors. What are challenges? Okay, all right, thank you.
Supawadi say the learner's opinion toward the learning activities using an interview.
So if we talk about learner opinions, that for me, I would say it would not be appropriate for a narrative inquiry, because opinions, even though it sounds complex, but opinion toward the activities, it's like you don't need narrative inquiry. You don't need to spend much time doing all narrative inquiries. So one thing about narrative inquiry is that the stories that we tell has to be important enough in order to dissect the stories. We need to dissect the stories, right? There has to be some details in there, and it has to be some important to a wider researchers or wider field. Okay. Or do you have others besides learner opinions?
I think that's it, because the other participant, Amy, also mentions about opinion as well.
Okay, yes, okay, thank you. So keep in mind that the narrative itself, you need to have details. It's not simple just exploring opinion, but about opinions toward variety of Englishes. This one is, oh, maybe what valuable enough, or opinions towards online learning in general would be okay, but opinion toward a particular activities in the classroom, that would not make it narrative inquiry.
I see. I have one more from Sutia. Third, say teachers believe. What about teachers believe about?
Yeah, that would work.
That work too. Okay, thank you.
Okay, all right. Now, so narrative inquiry aims to understand human experiences as important. So that's the another characteristic. It has to be, these stories has to be important enough to study, right? Even though we focus stories, but it should not be any story. It has to be important enough, but we don't study not for the purpose of entertaining or therapeutic. You know what I mean? So we don't study stories just to say, oh, I want to entertain others. I want to doing therapy with others. It's not about that. So stories that we study in narrative inquiry has to be important enough that when other researchers read this one, or other readers read the story, or study the story, it is important to a wider community. Now, the second bullet point is very useful here. Narrative inquiry interpret narratives in terms of literature of the field, a process which yields implications for practice, future research, or theory building. Now, even though we are interested in stories, but the goal is for a wider community. The goal is to raise awareness that these stories are important enough to pay attention to. It has the movement of we should do it now. We should study this aspect. or we should look at this aspect, okay? And it's not just any story. Let me give an extreme case, right? So let's say if we study body slam, right? Pitun body slam. So body slam, his story is about a person who ran from the south of Thailand to the north of Thailand. So these stories are very valuable to explore, right? Because, for example, how can he stay active? What drive him to persist in running from the south of Thailand to the north? Okay, and it can be useful for the field of sport and exercise science. It can be useful for social services. Okay, when he asks people to donate money for the hospital, right? Other stories would be stories of someone who are struggle, like having cancers, or stories of someone excellent teachers who teach writing, who receive knowledge, something like that. So these kind of thing can be stories, and it has to be interpreted in terms of literature of the field. And narrative inquiry explore the particularity from the perspective of the participants. I like your idea at the beginning. I don't remember who. We are trying to listen to their stories. As a researcher, we put ourselves into their shoes, right? And to understand their perspective, uh, the word choice, the tone that they have, okay? And narrative inquiry has co-constructed knowledge. I think I mentioned this already. The researcher work together with the participant to generate stories. Now, even though the participant have their own stories, but retelling them may be difficult. So our job is to co-construct it or work with them to generate stories, trying to dissect their story. It's like a doctor, right? Trying to dissect our stomach and try to put it back together, okay? Now, meaning making is central to narrative inquiry. That's the narrative inquiry. Now, if we compare narrative inquiry with qualitative research in general, as you can see now, the focus of narrative inquiry is story. Story is most important in doing narrative inquiry. And story here has to be important enough to explore, okay? Are there any criteria to say enough? Well, no, but it has to connect to the literature. This is the language or the stories that literature are trying to engage. And the goal is to understand life experiences, okay? And the design is the same. It is flexible, evolving, and emergent. The sample or the participant is relatively small, okay? Because we're interested in the particularity. And the data collection is mainly researcher, the same with qualitative research. Analysis is inductive, but narrative inquiry has this specific aspect, which is restorying. So when I asked you to retell the stories of the participants, right? Those are restorying processes. There are several decisions that we have to make in order to restorying, okay? And the findings is evaluated in terms of authenticity and aesthetic rather than trustworthiness or validity or reliability. We look at authenticity or aesthetic, okay? We will learn how to represent narrative inquiry in the next session, which is on the 21st. All right, now, so narrative inquirers now is inherent. If you are interested in doing narrative inquiry, these are the characteristics that you must have. Is inherently interested in stories. You have to be interested in stories. You have to be kind of nosy, so to the participant life, okay? So when this is the joke that I always get when I talk about narrative inquiry, people always, tell me that, oh, so you are nosy about people business. I was like, oh, kind of that. But but we are interested in stories, but at the same time, we honor that stories as important. It is important enough that other researchers have to care, okay? And narrative inquiry is interested in details and is tolerant of ambiguity, because we need to really trying to elicit stories from the participants, and we need many stories, and then we are trying to dissect or analyze those stories and put it in a meaningful form, okay? And narrative inquiry thinks inductively and analytically. That's the characteristics. All right, now narrative inquiry design. So the design of narrative inquiry is not complicated, but it takes time. Even though we ask the participant to tell story, but it's not a one-time deal. It is a multiple time deals trying to understand this experience, right? But these are the general procedures suggested by Creswell. Uh, First, you need to determine whether the research problem or question-based fits narrative inquiry. To be called your research narrative inquiry, the issues that you are exploring has to match with the narrative inquiry. So the goal is to understand teacher experience or human experience, right? What kind of experience that you are interested in? Like for me, my research has been understanding student-teacher experience when they learn to teach. Because I'm a teacher educator, I am interested in the struggles, the challenges, and how they overcome those challenges. So I want to explore their stories that they cannot tell at the school, because being a student teacher or pre-service teachers, they are very powerless at the school because they are mentor teachers, right? Their mentor teachers always, use them. They have to please them. But when they step out of the school, I'm interested in their struggle, how they pass that challenges, and I use teacher identity as the focus. Okay. Once you determine whether the research problem is appropriate, then you need to select one or more individuals who have stories or life experiences to tell. And these individuals should be someone who have rich story to tell. If you do research, the criteria to select the individual has to be stated very clearly. For example, the student-teacher identity a moment ago, I'm interested in student who did the teaching practicum for 1 year. So I'm not interested 1 year at the same school, because I want to understand how they overcome challenges. I want to understand the challenges that they experience and also how they overcome the experiences. So I am interested in those who at the end stage of teaching practicum. So I'm not interested in someone who is at the school for only 2 months, for example. And I'm interested in maybe stories of different genders. So I want to have, male and female. And I'm interested in someone who is willing to participate, right? So it should not be random. It should be specific and purposeful, okay? And we need to spend considerable time with them, gathering stories through multiple types of information. In the next slide, I will share with you the techniques that we can use to get stories or to elicit stories from the participants. And then we analyze the stories and restory them into a framework. That is the most challenging part when we do narrative inquiry. Now, doing narrative inquiry, when we interview participants, we analyzing it. It seems not difficult, but how can we represent it in a framework or in a meaningful concept is the most challenging part for emergent researchers, including myself. If you do narrative inquiry, how to represent the data is the most challenging. especially how to represent the data until it get published. That's the challenging part. And finally, the procedure, you need to collaborate with the participant actively, okay? You need to involve them, spend time with them, ask stories, ask more questions, write notes. It is an inductive process, okay? So let's zoom into, we have only 40 minutes left, and then I want to do another activity. Okay, tools to collect narrative. Now there are several tools to collect narrative, right? So these are some examples of tools that you can use. For example, you can use interview, right? And their structure and say my structure or semi-structured interview. And interviews, there are several interviews, several types of interview. One interview that is very useful is live story interview, okay? And another technique that I have used is photo elicitation, which is you will be doing today, where we use photos as a tool to tell stories, okay? And we have narrative frames, which was developed by Bart Kazan. I don't know how to say his name. It's like a skeleton of scaffolding writing. And in narrative, it's not only explore from the verbal sense only, but you can use observation. You can shadow the participants, follow them like a shadow. We call shadowing technique. So for example, I shadow my student teacher at school. So I spend time with them from the beginning of the school opens until the school ends. It's like one day shadowing in order to understand the context that they lived in. Now let's look at the narrative frames. So narrative frame is, let's do narrative frame first. This is example of narrative frames. So narrative frame is like an incomplete sentence. It's like a frame that is used to get participant to complete the thought, okay? To complete the thought. And this narrative frame were used to explore more, okay, participants, maybe 100 people, something like that, 80 people. And Barkenzen say that these are example of frames that I took it from Barkenzen research. For example, I am an English teacher. The best thing about my teacher training was that, and then the participant just, type, right? Type what do you call it, the answers, finish the thought. When I first started to teach, and then participant complete the thought, okay? The place where I now teach is leave it open, okay? My students are just leave it open. So these are we call narrative frames. Now let's do narrative frame. Now I'm going to, can you go to Mentimeter? Mentimeter. Everyone, you can go to menti.com. Do you know menti.com?
Yes.
So go to menti.com now, and then this is the menti.com. Oh, this is the Zoom. How can I? Now, if you search menti.com, this is what you will see, right?
Yes.
And then you are waiting for my code. So I'm going to give you the code. We are going to do word cloud first in order to see the frame. Now the code is there, 6347 and 46. And then once you put the code, it will ask you to put 3 words in there. Now this is a frame. I think a teacher it's like, and I want you to put 3 words in there. And then you click submit. You can use cell phone or you can use computer. Okay, now we have 1%. Now this is word cloud. Ooh. we have gardener, we have parent, we have guide, mother. Oh, now you can see that facilitator seems to be the most common word, right? Teacher is like a book, a guide, guidance. Okay, we have 10 participants now. The gardener, counselor, a friend, a resource. Okay, 12. A mom, a help friend. Oh, now you can see that the more frequencies the word received, the bigger the size of the vocabulary. Now we can see guide, facilitator, a facilitator, a coach. Okay, we have 14 people. Odd, how many people are there? 22, right?
Supposedly 22. Let me double check right now. I'm working right here with the mouse.
The 22 including observers ค่ะอาจารย์เด่น
Oh, อาจารย์ Okay, thank you. Okay, so I think that should be enough. If you have technical problem, it's fine as well. Okay, now as you can see, this is the narrative frame. Now to analyze, now I use this one just for fun. Okay, the word cloud just for fun. So when exploring narrative frame, now we can understand the metaphor of a teacher, right? Metaphor can represent the perception of teachers in the society. And as you can see now, a guide seem to be, big parent. So we can see that teachers in Thailand context or in our group, okay, seems to have the connotation of guide, facilitator, and parents. It can represent constructivist perspective as the facilitators, and it can also represent family perspective like ASEAN context, like parent, friends, psychologist. Oh, we have a friend there. Okay, so this is called a narrative frame. Now when you analyze a narrative frame, you can analyze quantitatively, you can count frequencies, or you can analyze qualitatively as well. Okay, now we would go to Mentimeter again. Now I'm going to do a little bit more of more open-ended. So that one is not, it's very frame, right? Very frame. So the next one is, so go to menti.com again, and I want you to finish your thought here. This is an, I become an English teacher because, now, are there anyone who are not teacher now?
I think most of us.
Most of you, right? Okay, so this frame should be fine. Okay. So now you type and then you submit. This is more open responses. Okay, now we have someone to Now you can look at the responses that our participants have. So we have stability, the love of language, to be a role model, okay? Love to share knowledge, okay? Assist learners in their English jobs, okay? Want to inspire Thai people to speak English? To sharing knowledge, everyone to access to English, okay? I would love to make a difference, okay? Okay. I'd love to make a difference. I would love to share my knowledge as experiences, okay? I have a passion for teaching, okay? What I've learned to students to allow them to develop their English. I believe in investing in human. Ooh, very sense of mission. A teacher educates people. When they are educated, they become independent and they can make improvement to themselves, community, society, and the world. Oh, okay. I have a passion for teaching. I would like to inspire students to in the next generation. I would like everyone to access to English. Okay, you see? Okay, now these are more open, right? Compared to the previous one. This kind of narrative frame can actually elicit more stories. Now, but as you can see, this type of narrative frames, we don't know who say what, right? So we cannot really analyze from the participant perspective. We can analyze the responses, okay? Now, for this type of research of responses, you can also analyze these responses quantitatively. You can count frequencies of the words. You can count like what's the most important points, or you can analyze the data qualitatively, which is grouping them into groups based on your responses. Now I can see that the love of the language, right? And also you are passionate about teaching and you have a sense of mission. These can be fit nicely with the tripartite framework of motivation to become English teachers, like extrinsic, intrinsic, and altruistic reasons. Okay. All right, so these are the narrative frame that we do. Now I'm going to go back to the photo elicitations, okay? So interviews, right? Probably you know what it's like to interview someone, or if you haven't, but even though interview itself, you need to ask very good questions. You need to be trained how to do interviews properly before you do narrative inquiry. Now the next activity, the next workshop is the photo elicitation technique, okay? Which is from my point of view, I think this one is very useful to get in-depth data about participant belief and also experiences. Now, what is a photo elicitation? Photo elicitation is a technique that incorporates photos with interviews. So we will ask the participants to take photos. We will have prompt, or we'll ask the participant to bring photos that represent the issues that we're exploring. Okay, or you can use artifacts as what I asked you to do this morning and to share that in the interview. Now for the photo elicitation interview, first of all, I want you to look around your context. So I am imagining now. So look around your context. And I want you to take at least 2 photos that represent your current graduate learning experience. Okay, that represent your current graduate learning experience. I want you to take the photo now, okay? And then I want to send the photos to the coordinator. Now, Ot, do you have like group for TEFL?
Yes, we do, but not for our just, this participant group.
The participant, okay. Now, how can we?
I think we can clarify on the chat line.
Yeah, on the chat box, I think we can.
Okay, that would be great, Ajahn. Yeah.
Yeah.
So send the photo to the chat box, okay?
In the
So
chat box, you will see the chat, and then you will see the file attached on the right. Then you can share it to everyone.
okay, now I will give you probably 5 minutes. It shouldn't take long.
Yeah.
So the photos can be metaphorical, okay? It can be anything. Think about your current graduate learning experience and try to take the photo that represents that. So now I'm going to take off this one. Stop sharing, okay? I'm going to look at the chat box.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, 5 minutes.
All right, just to recap what Ajahn Denchai said. So everyone, you will need to take photos, at least 2 photos that represent your current graduate learning experience. At least 2 photos that represent your current graduate learning experience. And now you have about 4 minutes left. Be back around 11:45. Right now on my clock is 11:41. So I'm gonna do mine too.
Okay, so I think some of you sent the photos already.
Yes.
Those are very interesting photos.
I agree.
Okay, now let's talk about who's that? Kinley, right?
Yeah, Kinley.
Kinley, or can you help me download the one and
Definitely. May I share the screen so everyone can see?
Yes.
So this is Kinley.
Okay, this is Kinley. Now, Kinley, can you tell? So now this is real. The prompt. Let's say the prompt is take photos, right? That represent your graduate learning experience. Okay, now this is after we take this one. After we after we take photos, and this is what it's like when we do photo elicitation interview. Now, can you show the Kingsley's photo?
Absolutely. Here we go.
Okay, now, Kingsley, can you tell me a little bit about this photo?
Hello everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Oh, okay. So this two pictures or two illustrations I have is the representation of my learning experience that I experience every day. So the specs that I have is for reading every day, and the watch that I have at the back of the spec is to represent how time is important in every day of my life. I mean, in the stay out here in these 2 years, so I have to manage really with the time, and the specs represent the reading.
Okay. All right. So
I don't know whether it makes sense or not.
why did you decide to put this angle? Like, why don't you decide put from the side? Is there any meaning in there? Why the glasses first, and the time, the watch is at a little bit further?
I have the specs in front because the reading comes first, or whatever it is. Yeah, reading comes first, and then the second thing is the time, which is very important because you need to have the updates of everything, like the schedule and all, especially in this time, especially in the pandemic period where you have to have everything online, so you have to update all the dates. So when you're going to have the webinar series, when to attend the workshops and all. So the second thing is time.
All right, thank you. So we normally in photo elicitation, we'll go on and on about these photos, okay? We'll go on and on asking the color, is the color meaningful? So what was it like? Can you give specific examples? Something like that. Now, can you share the next one? Touch a grid, right?
Yes.
That's
Moss.
Moss, okay.
Yes.
I just know him Moss, right?
Yeah, I'm curious to see his. Hold on. I think it is. Cannot open this. Moss, can you help me?
Maybe I can share mine.
Yeah. Let's see if Moss can share from his end. I think I can download everyone except Moss. So let's Moss share.
Oh, okay. Moss, can you tell me a little bit about this picture?
So actually this picture is like a metaphor though. So it's just like graduating life, you have so many like ways to go, but it just depends on you where to go. So maybe it kind of like, just like running in a mess, but sometimes the way out is already there, but you just need to make your own decision.
Oh, you're seeing this as a maze.
Yeah.
Not like a building block. Oh, okay. So it's more like a bird eye view perspective, right?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. So there are several ways to go. It just depends on you. All right. Thank you. Okay. Next person is Melam. Okay.
Second place. Moss, can you stop sharing? Okay, for Melam.
Melam.
Yes, Melam is, I think, sky. So, okay, here comes.
Okay, Melam, can you tell me a little bit about this picture?
Okay, so my journey here, the learning journey is just like, it's like as big as sky, as wide as the sky, as opening as sky.
Okay.
So sky is the limit, I guess.
Okay. Is there a particular cloud that you're referring to, or what? or it's the whole thing that you're seeing?
As a whole, I guess. I haven't specified a particular one, but I would like to see it as a very wide, very big one, big sky.
Okay, so your graduate learning experience is a wide, it's an opening
Yes.
space. It's like
Yes.
you're looking up to the sky, trying to consume everything, right? Okay, so it's
Yes.
very different from Moss Angle. Can you say that Moss Angle is a bit bird eye view, trying to see the maze, right? But for her, looking up, it has meaning in there. All right, thank you, Melam. Okay,
Thank
Vanida,
you.
please. Mhm.
So Juanita.
Okay, hang on. Oh, you have a pot of plant. Okay, can you tell me a little bit about this picture?
So this is a tree that I got like months ago. So when I got it, first I got it, it's very little and it was beautiful at that time. But after I keep watering it, it's get bigger and bigger. And I think it's getting more beautiful. And I think this tree can represent me in the way of like my education like journey. Because after I applied for the master degree, like I represent myself as a tree that like get bigger, and then the water is my knowledge.
Okay, okay.
Wow.
All right, thank you. Okay, Thanakorn.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. All right. Here we go.
Oh, Thanakorn. Oh, this is interesting. So Thanakorn, can you tell me a little bit about this picture?
Yes. Actually, this is the speaking workshop that I have done with many of friends here, and actually, it was my first time ever that I have ever run a workshop here. So, from taking took a course, teaching speaking course uh, last semester. So I have got like I have learned so many things. So this is like my most current graduation study. Yes.
Okay, so it's you didn't take the photo, right? But you use existing photo to represent your graduate learning experience.
Yeah, yeah.
In
Because right
easy
now
to-
I don't have anything to take. It's just empty room.
All right. No, it's okay. So can you see that when we ask the participant to take photos, if they are comfortable sharing existing one, it's okay as well. So this one he has meaning, very purposeful. Okay, thank you, Thanakorn. Okay, Benjamin, please.
Benjamin. There we go.
Oh, with the bag. Okay, now Benjamin, can you tell me a little bit more about this picture?
Actually, I would say that since after I study here, I have to change my bag because every time that I have to go to university, I have many things to carry with me, like notebook and my iPad and some of my papers. So it's very heavy. So I have to change my bag.
You have to
So
change it.
and this bag is very comfortable for me because it carry many things that I have to have when I go to the university. Yes, that's it.
So your graduate learning experience is about trying to what do you call it? Trying to be ready, right, at all
Yes.
times, so that you have to bring a lot of stuff. Oh,
Yes.
okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Next, please. Sutia, right? Sutia. Okay.
So this is Nong Tơi. Oh my.
Oh, okay. Yeah, can you tell me a little bit about this picture?
So I took this in my room and I want to portray the books, the stacks of books that I have while I study at the graduate school, and like all the clumsiness and messiness of my room while I'm like reading books and articles during the semester. And I think this is my bad behavior that I didn't keep things in the place that it belongs, but I try to put it like as a stacks as the picture shows.
So it's since your graduate learning experience has been trying to juggle the tidiness of your books and materials, right? Because probably there are a lot of materials. So maybe I'll ask you to give more specific examples, something like that. Okay, now let's do two more, okay? Sutia already, Tanagon already, who's that? Om, right? Vishan, Dome, right? Dome.
Dom. Okay, so let's look at Dom.
Dome, okay.
Here we go.
Okay, Dom, can you tell me a little bit about this picture?
Dom, are you there?
Can you hear me? So unlike our friends' photos, mine is very straightforward. My life here is a bit, I can say, full of pressure because I have a lot of work to do and I have limited of time to do so. So most of the time I try to pressure myself to get things done.
Oh, okay.
I also sent another photo which also show the happy side of my life here as well.
Oh, okay. All right. That's good. That's good. So that's due in the middle of the book, right?
Probably,
Okay. So let's do last person. Okay. Sorry. Oh, let's do two more and then we go Duang Gamon, right? Duang Gamon and Amy. Okay.
Okay, Duang and Amy. Okay.
Yeah.
Let me see. Oh, okay. This one you might like it. Ajahn Denchai.
Ooh.
I just printed it out this morning and I haven't read it actually, but for my graduate study life, so it tells that I have to read a lot and I have to explore many topics. Let's say this one, narrative approach, which this is the first time that I really pay attention to it, like what it's like. Yes.
That's all right. That's okay. All right. Thank you. So Amy, last person. Okay.
Amy. All right. Okay. So here comes the last photo.
Okay. So Amy, can you tell us a little bit more about this picture?
Yes. Hello. So I just think back about myself in the current teaching in my school, where I can teach them that face to face in the classroom. Because right now I have to teach them by using the online application, online teaching. So I just think about myself back in time, and this is where, but still it's a big change of the coronavirus, but I still can teach. This is what I found during these 3 months.
Oh, okay. So you're connecting your experience, graduate experience with your real teaching context, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right, guys. So these are something about the photo elicitation. So you ask the participant to take photos or bring photos that represents the prompt or experience that you are interested in, and after that you ask them to talk about the photos. Now, when interviewing by using photos, you need to talk about the angles that they are choosing, the reasons that they chose to take this one, or sometimes you have to really walk with the participants. So my student, when Sakorn, when he used this photo elicitation technique, he followed the teacher like a shadow. So when the teacher, let's say the teacher used the camera, right, to take a photo, he looked at the angle and then he record, he take notes, and then interview with you asking that questions. Okay, so photo elicitation can be a powerful tool to understand other aspects of life stories or life experience. As you can see the photos, I actually learn from you, and I also, while interviewing you, I feel the same thing. Okay, because I am also an alumni of TEFL. Okay, so I've been there, you know, reading a lot, pressure. So I have survived, and there are some photos that connected me very well. The photo of, I think, Vipada, not Vipada, who's that?
Which photo?
Wanida, right? The tree thing that saw me. Okay, so I see myself as a tree thing, like growing and, you know, pouring knowledge to me. So my graduate learning experience has been that type. Okay, all right, now let me go back and share the screen when I summarize this. Okay, now in photo elicitation, as you can see, again, when the participants, right, when the participants,
John, I'm sorry, we could not see your slide. I'm sorry.
Oh,
yes. Could you stop sharing and reshare your slide again one more time, please?
Okay, hang on.
No problem.
Can you see the slide now?
Not yet.
Not yet. So I need to stop sharing.
Yes. There we go. Yes.
Okay. All right. So in photo elicitation, it gets, you can see that the data that you get are sometimes metaphorical, sometimes are straightforward, sometimes there are other aspects that you cannot get from simply just using a structured interview. Now for the structured interview and semi-structured interview, you have guided questions and then you ask more questions, right? But for photo elicitation, it has been supported that you can get other type of data from the experience there. And it's actually fun. Research has been shown that participants actually are more open, okay, to give more data because it's fun. And also photo elicitation works very well with young researchers because we have something to hold on to. So we have the photo to talk about, and then we record the interviews, and then you can talk about the angles of the colors, okay, get more data on that, okay? Like for example, he mentioned about the pressure, right? Another photo is the smile. Even though his pressure, still he is happy to be, you know, graduate student there. So these are things that we can get from interviews. All right. And then before we leave today, I think the time is up. These are the questions that I want you to think about for a week. Okay. So how do we know that the one who shares the artifacts like Moms or Supavadi tells us the truth? How do we know that Moss give us truth? Okay. How do we know that Supavadi tell us the truth when they talk about her pen? And when Moss talk about the earpod that he talks. So next week, we're going to talk about truth in narrative inquiry. And also, so for this week, I have covered philosophical and theoretical underpinnings of narrative inquiry. I've covered narrative inquiry designs, okay? I've talked about tools to collect narrative. There can be more tools to collect stories, Okay, you can create tools that get story from the participants. Actually, narrative inquiry encourage you to be creative in collecting the stories from the participants. And on the 21st, we are going to talk about analyzing narrative. Now, if we have stories, how can we analyze them? And how can we represent them into a frame, narrative frame? Okay. At this point, do you have any questions for me before about this? Before I dismiss?
Right, so feel free to, either unmute and then ask or use the chat box. Do you have any questions?
Yes, I do.
Okay, great.
So, have you ever, like, let's say, experienced a participant, let's say someone you choose, and then at the beginning, he or she is willing to give data, quite a lot, is open, and later on, like, he or she changes his mind, and kind of shut you off, and we like kind of don't know how to move on to get more data. Is this like a kind of case that ever happens?
Yes, actually, it happened with one of my participants. Actually, it happened. So when we do qualitative research, relationship is very important, and we don't know whether they experience difficulty in their life or not. So one of my participants is a student teacher, right? After for the first 2 months. He was willing to give data, interview, do cooperate with me. But for the third month, he started to, cancel every appointment that I have with him. So it happens. So as a researcher, I values what do you call it, that decision. So I zoom in to, I asked him one more time whether is he comfortable, and he's still not saying. Maybe I'm the teacher educator, I have more power to say to them. So I ended up not including him in my research because I don't, based on this, I cannot have the data. The data I have is there, but I'm still not comfortable retelling his stories. So yes, yeah.
So does it mean that you have to have an ample or enough, even though you say small, but still have enough just in case something's happened, just like your kids, so that even though we cannot collect, one participant, we still have enough data collection.
Yes,
to produce research.
Yes, and one of the principle of recruiting the participant is that you need to develop relationship with the participants. Uh, Working in the qualitative paradigm, not just narrative inquiry, relationship is deemed important in data collection. So you need to have a little bit more so that you do, when you lose, it's okay for your data collection. At that time, I only have 3 participants. So one participant I didn't include. So I just reported 2 participants. The paper that actually asks you to read, that's the one.
Oh, I see.
Okay. Yeah. That's why we have 2 participants. And you will see something that the reason why I asked you to read that paper. Okay. All right. Any other questions?
Any other questions?
Okay.
Okay, so I got one question from Balaam. So let me read it. How do you make the narrator comfortable sharing the truth?
2 bits, right?
Yeah.
So it's actually okay. Now, how do I make comfortable, right? So being narrative inquirer, the first thing is you need to learn to listen. So you need to talk less than the participants, okay? And smiling, okay? But listen more. Try not to. So listen is mean you really need to listen, pay attention, okay? Be kind. But as I said, the most important thing is developing relationship with them. So making them comfortable. That's why in narrative inquiry or other qualitative research, you always need to make friends first. before you actually get the data. Sometimes you can spend at least 2 weeks not collecting the data. So for example, one of my students, he explored teacher identity of like who believe in Buddhism, teaching English in Christian school. So he himself believed in Buddhism. But when exploring about belief, he spent time there at least like 2 weeks, not collecting the data right away. He just be there and like hang out, have coffee, talk, like develop relationship before collecting the data. And once the data collection goes on, you should always make them feel comfortable. For example, be honest to what you are doing. I think honesty is very important in doing narrative inquiry.
I think the trusting issue is also important, right?
Right.
If they trust you, then they can reveal their truth.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, given that, it seems to me that this kind of narrative inquiry takes time.
Mm-hmm.
And do you have any recommendation on the timeline of this narrative inquiry? That minimum of it would be more than like at least 3 weeks, 4 weeks, or is there any definite number in order to generate or collect those kind of good solid data?
Unfortunately, when do you narrative inquiry, we never know when it's enough, right?
Right.
If you want to put in your proposal, normally like my student, I suggest them to put the word data saturated. So you will collect the data until the data is saturated. Time become less important as long as you get enough data. Now, how do we know that the data are saturated? You will not have any emergent data. Based on my experience, I spent time at least 6 months collecting narrative inquiry, only 2 people. So it takes time until you will know when to stop. Okay. So I would say there's no specified time, but you can put it the data until the data is saturated. Yeah.
So giving that time in our program, so we have 2 years, for example, to complete the master project or the thesis, which would be a little bit longer. So like in your case, it takes 6 months. Would that discourage some of the graduate to not doing or choosing this way or this approach for the narrative? Is there any bright side, or how do you encourage them to do it?
I don't know whether my student got an influence for me or not, but I have 3 students actually completed their master with narrative inquiry.
Oh, great.
3 masters already.
In that case, may I add up? I think it depends on what you explore, right? If you need some, information more abstract, like Ajahn Denchai explored before. I don't know which agent you.
Identity, Ajahn, teacher identity. Yeah.
Right. Sometimes it takes some time. So if I think it depends on what you explore, and if you narrow down a little bit and spend more time, like every day, if you can spend the time every day with like the participant or like someone who participate in your research, right? It depends on how much time you can spend on that, right? So it's 2 weeks, more than 2 weeks, 3 weeks. It depends.
Right. Okay. I agree with you, Ajahn. And another thing that to consider is that when you do narrative inquiry, it's not just about collect more story. Oh, more. It's not just collecting, right? So this is what I do all the time. So I collect stories, right? Let's say interview. I interview them, and before I interview the next time, I will always analyze the data first, which is I will talk about the next week. So I analyzed what has been left, what kind of questions that I haven't got information from the first interview. And then I went back again and probably went back and observed, and then come back again and then analyze. So it's about collecting, analyzing, asking questions, what are left, collecting. and then you will see the aha moment. That's the I call it the hum of doing qualitative. Oh,
Well,
final.
yeah. Let me share my experience. I reviewed a paper on the inquiry based research like this. The title is like a day of a foreign students in Australia. Right, so they observe like record the journals interview for 7 days and then select one days like that of a one person only, right? And then wrote it insightful results. And well, I think this is doable in my opinion.
Yeah.
And that paper get published.
Yeah, that and is that the article in Australian Apply Linguistics?
Right. That one. But that one, but the author is like the renowned professor. But when I review is blind. I didn't know that it is his.
Oh, okay.
Right, but when it is get published, oh, it's him. So I don't remember who learner autonomy.
Phil Benson.
I think it's Benson. It's Benson's. I didn't know by that time though, but I think it's very like interesting story.
Right.
And then it's like it serve. He focused on to what extent or how they employ they using learner autonomy to support their their life as a foreign student in Australia.
Yeah, in that case, I also read that paper, Jan. So there are reasons why he represent in one day, even though he collected it 7 days. So yeah.
Right, from the 7 days, he observed 7 days, but then he select only one day, right? But it's a reason I didn't remember that well, but it can be done though.
Yes, thank you very much, John Pabimon. Okay, is there any other questions? Otherwise, I will ask all the participants, including Ajahn, Denchai, and Ajahn Pabimon, to maybe take a quick photos. But once again, thank you, Ajahn Denchai, for your insightful inquiry narrative, and that make us really interested in doing this, especially some of the the first year TEFLer who started thinking about what to do with their research. So they would be one of the great options. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So you know what, Ajahn Denchai is one of our gems, as a grad student at in the TEFL program, and he made his a very prosperous future in the field, in the academic field. And his strength is if you notice, his explanation is clear. It's easy to follow, right? Even though something is abstract, and so like take this as sample if you are would like to be a teacher, good teacher. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for this first session, Kaden.
Okay, see you again on the 21st. What you wanna say? Like taking picture? I need to. It's like I'm not in my apartment.
Sorry about that. No more said that we have group photos for our
work. I'm no better. I'm no better. We feel worry free นะคะ
Yes.
Hang on. Oat, hang on.
เยอะนะคุณเด่น
น้องมอส
เมลามแก้วธิดา
boat ยศกร
จิงฮีใครมุโอเคแก้วธิดาน่ะประจำเลยนะแก้วธิดาเห็นไหม
Alice
นะ she's not here I'm sure แก้วธิดา always not here
Alice,
okay let's take a picture
okay
โอ๊ตเป็นคนเทคกับพิกเจอร์
Moss
1, 2